Vince McMahon steps down, or does he? Has Sasha Banks been released? And Jeff Hardy's DUI. These stories and more on this episode of A Shot of Brew. Hey, what's going on, party people? It's your bro, Yellow Boy, and I'm here for another episode of A Shot of Brew. You know, where we give you a shot of news, just a little bit from this week in the world of wrestling. First and foremost, I want to tell everybody a happy Father's Day. Also, I want to tell everybody a happy Juneteenth. We are recording today, June 19th, 2022, and give you a little bit of the news today. But before we get started, you guys, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like this video, share it. You know the drill. Also, go check out the channel to look at some of the other things that we put up, including the 60-second sips from over here, boy. Good stuff for beer review, especially if you're thinking about ideas for Father's Day. If you ain't already got it, you should. But let's get on with the news. So on June 15th, the Wall Street Journal came out with the report that Vince McMahon was being investigated for a previously undisclosed settlement agreement for a former employee. Included a payoff of $3 million, you guys, for a female paralegal that McMahon was having an affair with. In addition to that, it also reported that the woman, the paralegal, was hired in at $100,000 a year for her salary, but after the sexual relationship, it increased to $200,000. So there's where the problem entails, because the $3 million was Vince McMahon's personal money, reportedly, and the increase in pay for the quid pro quo, hopefully I said that correctly, is where it kind of comes into illegal territory. But these allegations, or excuse me, these emails were sent anonymously from a friend of the paralegal. It also alleged that McMahon, quote, gave her like a toy, unquote, to John Laurinaitis. So John Laurinaitis and Vince apparently were having a physical relationship with this paralegal. On June 17th, it was announced that Vince was voluntarily stepping down as the CEO and chairman, and Stephanie McMahon, who was on leave due to family issue, was now reported to serve as the interim CEO and chairwoman. However, Vince still reportedly was going to serve as the head of creative or part of the creative team, and this was very evident if you watched the Friday edition of SmackDown and Mr. McMahon. It was announced all over social media that Mr. McMahon would be a part of SmackDown for the evening, and he kicked off the show very briefly, coming out, cheap pops, doing the Mr. McMahon character, ultimately talking about the WWE signature, and most importantly the together portion, and then welcoming everyone to SmackDown, and then he peaced out. So it seemed like it was more of a ratings grab and a power move on his part than anything else. Now, Fightful Select, Fightful.com, have made reports that backstage reactions varied from confused to disappointed to enraged, but the overall consensus about Vince prior to SmackDown was that he was extremely jovial, regardless of what was going on with the investigation. It was quote unquote business as usual. So yeah, it's a lot to unpack. This was a very busy news week, to say the least. However, despite not knowing the outcome for Vince McMahon currently, it is believed by many, or most, that John Laurinaitis is probably not long for WWE, and he's one of yet another of Vince's fall guys. So more on this story as it develops. But from going to Vince McMahon's future in WWE to the future of one Sasha Banks. Now, way back on May 16th was when this started to unravel, with Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out on Monday Night Raw. Now, almost a month to that day, on June 15th, Raj Giri of Wrestling Inc. reported that from his sources that Sasha Banks had been released. Now, this information was not and has not been confirmed by WWE externally. It's still believed that Sasha Banks has been released by WWE. So multiple outlets were reaching out to WWE in order to confirm or deny Geary sources, but nothing has been communicated. Now, it is worth noting that when asked, no one in WWE actually shot down the claim. However, they were saying that they hadn't heard anything about it. Additionally, Banks, seemingly in response to this news, tweeted out cryptically a message saying, quote, "See, now this is why I stay off of Twitter," unquote. She furthermore, quote, "just making stuff up for no reason, ellipses, weekly," unquote. So, don't know if this is a red herring to throw people off or if truly, she's in talks to work, but all accounts from everyone in the know and with their sources are saying that Sasha Banks has been released by WWE. So, we'll continue to watch and see what happens as this story continues to unfold. But from rumors to absolute truths. Now, on Monday, June 13th, it was reported by several sites, including TMZ, that Jeff Hardy was arrested in Florida early Monday morning. Now, in the dashcam video that was released after his arrest, Hardy could be seen initially having guns drawn by law enforcement due to his behavior and inability to disengage his vehicle. The vehicle was seen rolling a little bit, which caused the law enforcement to draw their weapons. Now, Hardy was reported to have a blood alcohol level, or BAC, of 0.294, which is well over 3 times the limit of the level in the state of Florida. So he's been charged with multiple DUI, criminal charges, felony charges, because this has been, I believe, the third DUI charge that he's received in a span of, I want to say, 5 years. So due to this, Tony Khan has issued a statement. They waited, which they caught a little flack for, but they waited to make sure that all the information was correct. And TK issued a statement that Hardy is suspended without pay, and basically given an ultimatum that he return upon successfully completing treatment and maintaining his sobriety. Now, while Jeff Hardy has not commented on the issue, his older brother Matt has, and made a comment on his Extreme Life of Matt Hardy podcast that with John Alba, saying that Jeff was so remorseful and so embarrassed. Now, Matt believes at the core of all of this is due, as far as Jeff's addiction, to dealing with their mother's death at an early age and trying to cope with their mother's death. However, Matt goes on during the podcast, and I am kind of but kind of shortening this up and saying that Matt basically was saying that it was Jeff's own responsibility, and as far as addiction in total, it's the person's own responsibility, and it has to constantly be in check. Now, as far as Matt's concerned, Matt said that moving forward, he's going to change it up a little bit and tweak things a little bit and try to make some magic happen. So what that means for AEW TV is yet to be seen. However, speaking of Matt changing things up and wanting to make magic happen, yesterday the Hardys were scheduled to perform at AAA's Triplemania against Dragon Lee and Dralistico in the main event. Now, of course, obviously, Jeff Hardy is unable to be at that show due to what's occurred. So during the show, Matt Hardy made an announcement that his partner would be none other than Johnny Hardy, or as you may know him, Johnny Caballero, or Johnny Mundo, or Johnny Impact, or maybe you know him just as John Morrison, but it was John Hennigan, who was the partner of Matt Hardy in yesterday's Triplemania main event. Now, unfortunately, this was in a losing effort in the main event as Johnny Hardy turned on Matt during the match after inadvertently colliding into each other. This allowed Dralistico to pin Hardy after giving a moonsault, but the show ended with Matt Hardy shaking hands with both Dragon Lee and Dralistico. So they were able to iron things out and make a match of it. However, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. But speaking of Triplemania, during that show, the AAA Reina de Reinas champion Taya Valkyrie issued a challenge to AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa to a match at a future AAA show. I'm happy to say that Thunder Rosa immediately responded in a Twitter post that basically said, "Hey, La Mera Mera, accept." So it's going to be good to see what happens from there. But that's basically the news, you guys. There was so much that occurred this week. Back-to-back things with Vince McMahon, Jeff Hardy, Sasha Banks, and that's not even including anything that's occurring with MJF or some of the other basic news. I just kind of wanted to point out some of the major hits that happened this week. But if you want to stay up to date with all the news that occurs throughout the wrestling world, make sure that you're following us on Instagram, and that's us at bros_brews_and_botches on Instagram. Follow me on Twitter at Badass Yellow Boy, and that's BADAZZ_YELLABOI. You can follow, like I said, we have the watch list of 60 Second Sips with Over Here Boy, and you can follow him on all social media platforms at Over Here Boy. This has been one heck of a week. I want to take time out to give a special thanks to Panther Creek Brews for having a event last night that I attended. Great time, great fun for everyone involved. Had a comedy show. The comedians were excellent. So if you're in the Middle Tennessee area and you know Panther Creek, give them a holler, give them a shout, let them know that Bros, Brews, and Botches sent you. Whew. If this week was any indication of what this following week is going to be, the wrestling world is going to be on fire. So you guys, make sure you're tuning in to this channel, to the IG page to find out what's happening next. However, make sure that you're liking, sharing, subscribing. Let us know how we're doing in the comment section. And yes, thank you so much, you guys, for following along. This has been a Shot of Brew. I have been Yellow Boy, and I will see you next time. Peace out, y'all.